Question. I know that people are connecting with this intellectually, but what you're speaking to our souls, and you're speaking to our hearts right now, and we appreciate it. So, speaking of narrative, and I'm going to ask you two questions, but the first one's about you personally, and the second I want you to close out with some reparations models that we can look at for Illinois, and that's really good. We'll get back to that, okay? But the question I have for you personally is this. What is your narrative? How did you become this?
So that's another 2-hour lecture, but I'll try to be as truncated as possible in answering this. Because one, I think it's an impossible question to answer in some ways. All of us are a product of so many people who poured into us, so many decisions, luck, hard work, right? Just all of those things. But I think at my essence, what's important for you to know is, I'm like many of you, a child of the Great Migration. Like many of you, my family is from Mississippi. We just were so country. We thought we hit the big city when we got to Waterloo, Iowa, and didn't make it to Chicago. If not for that, I would be in Chicago probably because, of course, the Illinois Central line was what brought Black refugees out of the South. My father was born on a cotton plantation in Greenwood, Mississippi. My grandmother was born on that same cotton plantation. Her mother had to deliver my father because Black people could not go to the hospital to give birth in Greenwood, Mississippi when my father was born. That is what centers me, is understanding I am one step removed from a cotton field, literally, right? That when my grandmother got on that train with my father and his older brother in hopes of finding the promised land in the north, she found what we all know, what our parents and grandparents found to be the reality, is as Malcolm X said, right, is that the South is everything south of the Canadian border in the United States, that there was no promised land for our people, that the North had a different architecture of racism and segregation, but it was in some ways more effective after the Civil Rights Movement because they segregated us in the North by housing and by education. So all of that is this desire as a child when I started being bused as part of a voluntary school desegregation order from my Black neighborhood school to a white school on the white side of town. I learned a lot about the structure of inequality through the school bus window. So I was an extremely nerdy child. Like, I know it's hard to believe, I'm very fabulous now, but I was very nerdy, and I was paying attention to things. And like I'm watching through the windows as we get to the Black side of town, everything starts getting nice, or white side, right? It gets nicer. The houses get nicer, the roads are paved, they have all the parks over there, they have all the nice restaurants and the shopping centers. And I'm seeing all of this. And I'm also seeing every time we travel, you always know when you're getting to the Black community by how it looks, right? But in my mind, I'm like, well, why is this? And I'm going to school with these white kids in the rich white part of town, and I'm seeing their parents, and I'm like, their parents don't look like they're working harder than our parents. Their parents were working white-collar jobs, and in my mind as a child, white-collar jobs were the easy jobs. Because my family's working in beef packing plants. They're doing hard physical labor every day, grueling labor, and yet they can't get ahead. Like, I know my family likes nice housing. All right, I know my uncle who wants beautiful furniture but can't afford it, so goes to the rent-to-own place, not because he doesn't know how to make smart financial decisions, but because he works every day and doesn't make enough money to buy the things he wants immediately, right? But he wants his house to be nice. So I'm looking at how our Black people are working in my neighborhood versus, in my mind, white parents who don't seem to be working as hard but seem to have a lot more money than we do, and I want to know why that is. That's the essence of it. It's me trying to understand that I see the narrative on TV, I see the narrative in media that Black people just don't want to work, and yet everybody I know is working hard as hell, right? Like, my dad would be like an orderly and then come home and go work at Rath beef packing plant. Like, he'd come home for an hour. So you can't tell me folks didn't want to work. And then I started studying history. And all of a sudden, history was calming to me because the shit started making sense. right? Then I realized, oh, our neighborhood was redlined. That's why our housing looks like this. That's why black people couldn't get loans to fix their houses up, even though they wanted to fix their houses up. Oh, the government created this policy. Oh, our schools were segregated by policy, and we never got the same teachers or resources or curriculum. Oh, that makes sense. So then when you start studying history, then you realize that all of this was architected, and the world started to make sense to me in a way that it didn't. So that's, I think, what got me here, was this drive to make a world that wasn't making sense based off of the history I was being taught, based off of the narrative in media that we were consuming about black pathology, and wanting to make sense, and then this abiding and enduring sense of rage. This rage that I feel that fuels my work to this day, that black people are not deserving of the way we've been treated, that black people have worked so hard to build not just the financial basis of this country, but democracy itself, that we have believed in this country with a faith it did not deserve, and yet we get treated so poorly and blamed for how we have been forced to live. And so that is what drives all the work that I do, is this sense of rage, this sense of injustice, the sense that I'm not going to let the people who write the narratives about us go unchallenged. And then I think all the time about my grandmother, Arlene Tillman. And I think about the debt that I owe to this woman with a fourth grade education. A fourth grade education who left her family because she said her kids will not pick cotton. And every dream, like you think about every dream you have, she had. Every ambition I had, she had. But she was born in a society where she, as a black woman from the rural South, she could realize none of them. But what she could do is sow the seed, right? She could make that decision to leave the South and to suffer the indignity of cleaning white people's houses in the North to create the life that I have. And so we have a debt. This reparations work is us trying to both, right, receive the debt and pay the debt.